What's up guys, Josh aka SavageHydraa here, and welcome to episode 3 in my how-to series, hopefully giving you everything you need to know to start planning, building and using your own competitive Pokemon teams. In the last episode we looked at EV training and building on the first episode of breeding and how to take your level 1 freshly hatched Pokemon and bringing them up to the standards of competitive battling with the correct stat spreads through EV training. This episode will take that a little bit step further. I'll explain a little bit of in-context stuff about IVs and EVs, as well as how exactly they work and modify your stats. And then also move on to some other things such as natures will be covered in this video, and the actual in-battle modifiers to stats in this video on stat modifiers. Starting off with natures, as they're kind of like the baseline of stat modification. They're always there and always going to be visible to you and you can see what they're doing. As a definition, nature will increase one stat and decrease another by 10%. And that's from its base value, so this is before EVs and IVs come into play. The increased stat is red on the status screen, so if you go into the summary component of a Pokemon in the box or the party, you can look at its stat side, and one of the words, either like attack, defense, special attack, special defense, or speed, will be like faintly highlighted in red, and that will mean that that is the stat that's being increased by the nature. A stat that is blue is being reduced. So that's where you can kind of see what each nature is doing and what stats are being increased and decreased. If none of them are being highlighted in a colour and they all remain just regular white, it means that you have a neutral nature, of which there are 5. And because HP is unaffected by natures, it only affects the offensive, defensive and speed. Health is just not covered by natures at all. Basically it means that you have a nature that is increasing one stat but decreasing the same stat, meaning that you have no net change, so it's called a neutral nature. Natures are in essence random, but as explained in the breeding video, you can give a parent an Everstone and all of the offspring created by that parent that is holding an Everstone will have the same nature as the parent. So you can give a modest Pokemon a Everstone, breed it in the daycare, and all of its offspring will be modest as well. So to give you some context examples, appropriately using my mascot, Hydreigon, I might decide to use a timid nature, which would increase its speed and lower its attack. Now this would be more for using either full special attacking sets or full special attacking sets with U-turn on a Scarf set, for example. And that basically means that U-turn, I'm using it for the initiative of the switching, which I'm not using it for damage. So I'm not bothered about my attack stat, I just want to maximise my damage from my Dark Pulse, my Draco Meteor, and say my Earth Power or my Fire Blast or something like that. So for that respect, I don't need my attack stat, so I can just shave that off with the nature and give myself a bit of a speed boost. Alternatively, if you want to keep all of your offensive stats, you can either run, say, a speed reducing nature, or for the example of Hydreigon, I might decide to run a still speed increasing nature in either naive or hasty that lowers one of my defenses. So naive lowers special defense and hasty lowers physical defense. So this would mean that I could run a proper hybrid set with U-turn and maybe crunch or something, and I would not be reducing the damage that those attacks are doing, because my attack stat is still being unchanged by the nature. In a certain few cases, you might want to use a speed reducing nature. So for example, Gyro Ball is a move that does more damage the slower you are than the target. So you want to be as slow as possible to maximize your damage. Alternatively, Trick Room is a move that makes the fastest Pokemon move last and vice versa. So you want your Trick Room user to be as slow as possible, so that when it sets up the Trick Room, and then it moves first all the time while that Trick Room is in effect. So speed reducing natures are really useful in certain situations like that. Individual values, as covered in the breeding video as well, they apply to each stat with a value from 0 to 31, and each point equals 1 point in that stat at level 100. IVs determine hidden power types as well, and you can check what hidden power any individual has at the... there's a person in Anastar City in X and Y, and in Fortress City in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Hidden power is determined by a load of different combinations of the IVs, but it's essentially a pattern and combination of odd and even values. So it can be like anything, any IVs will always produce a hidden power, but it depends on which ones are odd and which ones are even. And also there is no fairy type hidden power, because that basically they made hidden power, assigned all the spreads, and then there's nothing left when they've introduced fairy type. So there's no fairy type hidden power. 3 of each parent's IVs are passed on via breeding. This is again covered more in detail in the breeding episode for individual values and how to start assigning them and building them into one Pokemon. And again, the Destiny Knot is something that increases it to 5 for the parent holding a Destiny Knot, and that's explained much better in the breeding video if you want to go check out that one. A few special instances of individual values. If you're a special attacker, you might want to try and get your physical attack IVs as low as possible, because it means that you take as little damage as possible from the move called Foul Play, which uses the target's attack stat rather than the user's attack stat to deal damage. So if you're a special attacker, you want your attack as low as possible so that you take as low damage as possible from Foul Play. This will be particularly important for something, say, that's a Psychic or Ghost type that's actually weak to Foul Play because of its Dark typing. Trick Room, another example, as I said, on the nature side as well. You want to be as slow as possible in the Trick Room effect. So having your speed as low as possible with 0 speed IVs will maximize your speed while in the effects of the Trick Room. Otherwise, you want to have as many of your individual values, 5 or 6 generally, at 31 as possible. So as many as you can up that high to maximize your stats. Effort values are covered in the last episode, episode 2, on EV training. They also apply to each stat and are up to 252 in any one stat with 510 EVs in total. So you can take 2 stats up to 252 EVs and a bonus of 63, because each of these 4 EVs equals 1 point in the respective stat at level 100, and then give yourself 4 EVs in another stat and have 2 left over, so that they're pretty much like dead EVs. They don't do anything because they don't build up to enough to give a point in anything anymore. They are earned at the same time as experience isn't gained. Again, all of this is explained much better in the previous episode on EV training and how to actually start building effort values onto things. And each Pokemon has its own specific EV value or EV yield that it gives when defeated. So for example, a Abra will give you 1 special attack EV, a Kadabra 2 special attack EVs, and a Alakazam 3 special attack EVs. So they generally go up as you go up evolution chains, and will generally be tailored to what that Pokemon is actually built to do. So a Pokemon that deals a lot, is built to be a special attacker, will give you special attack EVs when defeated. So it's almost like thinking of like you're experienced in seeing that special attacker, so you gain proficiency in special attack, if that makes sense. Effort values can be organised in super training, but as I said in the last episode, horde training is by far the fastest way to train a single stat. Power items speed this up further, giving 4 EVs per defeat of their respective stat, and Pokerus grants double EV yield from all experience-based sources. If a Pokemon is infected with Pokerus, it will have this symbol on it here, this like Pokerus symbol, and if it is being infected and then cured, so it still gains the effects of Pokerus but doesn't spread the disease any further, it will have this like smiley face on it there in pink. Another thing about your effort values is a reminder to try and get as many things as possible to an odd maximum health at the level that you'll be using them, because that means that you'll get all sorts of like little extra health here and there from certain damage over time effects and entry hazards and stuff, which is again, with some exceptions, explained in the actual EV training video. Onwards to the kind of the whole bulk of this video and what I'm going to be explaining fully is the in-battle stat modifiers. I'm not going to go into too much detail about items because I'm going to do an entire video on battle items. But for a start, in-battle stat modifiers are in-battle functions that increase or decrease your stats. And they can range from a -6 through to 0 and up to +6. So you'll be going from 0. 0 is your baseline. So your regular stats are your 0, and then you can go +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, +6, and in reverse to -6 as well. These changes to your stats can come via moves such as Calm Mind or Dragon Dance, which will increase your stats, and abilities such as Intimidate or Moxie. Intimidate will reduce the attack of any Pokemon when it's switched, the opposing Pokemon when it's switched in. So you send out an Arcanine with Intimidate, and your opponent goes -1 in its attack. Moxie, on the other hand, when the Pokemon with Moxie knocks out a Pokemon, and that's it has to physically knock it out, not when it faints when he's on the field. So if it dies to poison damage or anything, it doesn't count. It will gain +1 its attack, so it will start boosting its own attack as it knocks out other things. Secondary effects, such as those from something like Shadow Ball or Psychic, can reduce the special defense of something. The alternative is something as well like Crunch, which can reduce defense, or something like Icy Wind, which can reduce speed. You also have other secondary effects that are positive, such as Meteor Mash has the chance to increase the user's attack stat. Something like Iron Tail has a chance to increase the user's defense, and things like Silver Wind, Ominous Wind, and Ancient Power have a very small chance to increase all of the user's stats to +1. Status effects such as Burn and Paralysis also have some quite severe stat modification properties. A Burn halves the functional physical attack stat of a burned Pokemon. So if something is burned, the amount of physical damage it will be doing is essentially halved. For Paralysis, Paralysis cuts speed by 4. So it's basically if you paralyze something. That's definitely a word. You paralyze something, it's basically has its speed quartered. It's 4 times as slow. For increasing stats, to give a bit of context on how much they're changing by, each +1 grants an additional flat 0.5 to the stat multiplier. So for example, you're sitting at your 0 marker, which is 1 times your stats. Every +1 will add a 0.5 to that multiplier, so you go from 1 to 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 to 3 to 3.5 to 4 at +6. To give this a bit of context, decreasing stats will do the inverse, so it goes to 1 over, it'll be half when it's at -2. If it's at -4, it will be a quarter. No, it'll be a third when it's at -4, and at -6, it's a quarter. This kind of works in a weird way. It's better explained in fractions, which I'll show here. So it's all done as multiples of 2 in terms of the game calculation. So you have your 0, which is your 2 out of 2, which is equal to 1. And then as you go to +2, you have 4 over 2, which is 2 times, so you've got a 2 times multiplier. +4 is 6 over 2, which is 3, and +6 is 8 over 2, which is 4. As you go down the path, you get 2 over a number. So it adds 1 to the denominator of that 0 fraction, so you get 2 over 3, 2 over 4, 2 over 5, 2 over 6, 2 over 7, 2 over 8. So that -2 is at half, that -4 is a third, and that -6 is a quarter of the functional stat. It won't have any effects once you're switched out, or if you kind of reverse the changes, and it won't have any persistent effects outside of battle. But as long as a Pokemon remains in play on the field and isn't returned, these effects maintain themselves. Speed is something that I want to cover, is the fact that it scales a lot faster than any of the offensive stats. So you can sit there and sword stance and you become a real massive threat with your sky high attack stat, but you might be still really slow. So you can get knocked out before you get the chance to even do anything with that Sword Stance. And you might get burned or something anyway to then just negate the Sword Stance completely. Speed, on the other hand, scales a lot faster, and if you start increasing a Pokemon's speed with stat modifiers, it will start overtaking other Pokemon with higher base speed stats much more quickly. Then it will start dealing enough damage to take out walls and things. So for example, something that's relatively slow to start off with, such as a Golurk, which normally has a base speed of 55, if you max invest that with 252 speed EVs and make it jolly, so a speed increasing nature, one rock polish, which will give it a +2 in speed to double its speed, will actually put it up to be only outsped, and this is by max invested base values alone, so no choice scarfs and no other multipliers. The only things that I believe will outspeed it are a few megas maybe, and then Ninjask and Deoxys speed form. So a rock polish makes a Golurk very fast. Unless, say, an opponent has a choice scarf or something which will counteract that to some degree. But then you can always just set up more rock polishes and be even faster and faster. Although increasing your speed does still leave you vulnerable to priority, which is going to be in another entire video completely. Speed generally will outscale other things much faster than other stats, is basically what I'm trying to get across here. Other than that, that was pretty much probably quite a short video compared to other two, so pretty simple. It's a bit of overview on the last two videos, and a bit of extra with that one segment on the stat modifiers themselves, which are in-game multipliers, which you can apply and debuff and buff your own things. If you found this video useful at all, for any of the information at all, or believe that it would be useful for someone else, and you think that it's actually a rather informative video, then do leave a like, because the more likes it gets, the more spread and visibility the video gets, and then the more people can see it and get use out of it. So it's all about just spreading information, freedom of information. If you found this video useful for yourself and you'd like to see more to help you kind of build on your actual game knowledge to help you get into competitive Pokemon battling properly, do subscribe. There'll be more videos coming all the time until there's pretty much run out of things to actually talk about, because this is going to be a finite series because it can only go so far. And then if you think there's anything that I've missed in this video, or anything that you think that I can improve in general over this series, then do leave comments in that section down below, and I will catch up with all of them and address any issues that come up. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.